I haven't thought that I was a robot, but I was in fear that somebody would come barging in thinking that I was a robot, and maybe Elon Musk would come in saying he's been right about AI all along and we should really beware.
Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of the Heading to WP podcast. My name is Marcus Burnett. I am joined here today, as usual, by my co-host, TJ Rogers. TJ, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you? What's up, everyone? Thanks for listening in.
Yeah, I'm doing great. We are recording this on the week before Thanksgiving here in the U.S. What are you looking forward to in the next week?
Turkey and some good old-fashioned Filipino Thanksgiving food. So we get a hodgepodge of everything, the American
Yeah,
staples
yeah,
and some Filipino food. Yeah.
yeah. If you don't live in America, you don't celebrate Thanksgiving. The usual Thanksgiving in the U.S. is Thanksgiving, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, rolls. I'm going to have to ask you to elaborate on Filipino Thanksgiving food, though. I want to hear a little bit more about that.
All right. Well, anyone that knows me knows that I absolutely love eating and making lumpia. So I'm half Filipino, and we've always grown up having pancit, which are noodles, like rice noodles with meat, veggies. Sometimes the meat is like poultry, chicken. Sometimes it'll be beef. Sometimes it'll be shrimp. Then we'll have some fried rice, and we will also have a couple different Filipino desserts, and then we'll have some of the good old fashioned Southern stuff. My dad will make sweet potato pie. Um, we'll have green bean casserole, banana pudding. So my dad's in charge of desserts and the big bird. Yeah, and that's what
Nice.
we got. What do you do for Thanksgiving? Do you have German foods as well?
No, I just have the American stuff for the most part. I was going to say I haven't had any of the Filipino food for Thanksgiving, but I can personally vouch for lumpia and pancit. Those are delicious. Um, have to have to find a way to get some of those again soon. No, I am uh, German, partially German, half German, but we do not have German Thanksgiving foods. Just stick to the American staples: the turkey, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, green bean casserole, corn, bread, stuffing, and then traditional pies for dessert: pumpkin pie and pecan pie. So yeah, it's a lot of food and a lot of good times and hanging out with family and friends. And one of my favorite parts of Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving leftovers. So I'm definitely looking forward to those afterwards too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for some people, they last a little longer than others. You got to have some discipline, but yeah, the depending on the size of the family and friends that you have over, it can last you for a couple weeks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of which, we will I know we're just getting started with the podcast here, but we'll probably take a week break since it is Thanksgiving next week. We most likely won't have an episode next Monday after you're listening to this. But then we'll return the Monday after that. So stick with us here as we get through the holiday season as we're trying to jumpstart this. So let's go ahead and jump into what we're talking about today, which is must-have plugins for WordPress in 2021. And I think at this point we might as well say 2022 as well, because we're sort of coming to the end of the year here, and we'll be headed into 2022, and not a ton will change, I think, in terms of must-have plugins going into the beginning of 2022. So we're going to make this 21 and 22 and talk a little bit about what plugins each of us thinks that we need to get it for every new WordPress site. And we'll start with kind of the very basics. So TJ, why don't you go ahead and start us off and tell us what plugins do you start every WordPress site with?
So there are a handful that I like to start with. Some big ones that are necessary, especially if you are doing more than just a blog. Um, a couple plugins that can help extend flexibility and functionality of WordPress, like advanced custom field,
Mhm.
custom post type, and those custom post type UI. Those guys go hand in hand with each other. And for anyone who doesn't know, blog posts and pages are different post types within WordPress, and custom post type UI can help extend that if you're making, say, uh, team member profiles, or if you are, goodness, if you're a car dealership and you need to make car models and makes, if you're selling some of these markets we'll be getting into, especially because he deals and works with e-commerce type websites, or at least
Yeah,
plugins and support.
I was gonna say my mind immediately went to purchasing things because WooCommerce is what I'm usually wrangling to get to do what I want. So it's the kind of thing, custom post type UI would be the kind of thing you want for like a restaurant site, right? If you have menu items and you want to have each menu item be its own piece of content, and then let's say you also have locations for your restaurant, so then you also want to have different post types for each of your locations.
That's
That
right.
way you can kind of structure your data a little bit more, right? And have each of the different types of content have its own fields and its own information.
Yeah. So along with that, again, advanced custom fields goes hand in hand with that one, so that you can, like you're saying, structure those post types and have other fields, so to speak. Like, say you are making car models, you'll have fields for the type of seating it is, types of, what's the word I'm looking for, other types of luxury is not the right thing, but different features and stuff like that. So say you want to tell what kind of engine they may have, four cylinder, what the all wheel drive versus um, rear wheel drive, stuff like that. If you're making team member pages, you have different stats or bio information, um, and you can keep building upon that. You can have field sets and uh, different ways that those things can you can connect post types as well. Um, and so for those first two is a great way to build in a lot of different types of functionality and have your information organized and structured in a particular way that you would, need your organization or your website to share that information with anyone who's visiting and get that information across to your audience so that they can easily sift through, and search engines as well. All that stuff is very important, how those things are structured. And there are a couple others that I like to have on there as well. Yoast SEO. So there are several uh, popular sorts of SEO type plugins that deal with meta descriptions, meta titles, all these things that the crawlers and the search engines are grabbing from your website that are very important information and critical to help them see what's on your site as quickly as possible. And so using things like Yoast SEO, rank math to help make your site more visible and organizing that information in a way that helps it to be more searchable. Um, and then there are a couple others that you may or may not need, depending on if you're using, say, the pro version of Yoast SEO. Um, Redirection is its own plugin, and so if you are changing URLs or updating stuff like that within the site, and the path changes or the file name changes, Redirection will help get anyone who has either seen that page before or has a link to that particular piece of content in your site to get them to the right place instead of showing up a 404 and them just believing that that content no longer exists or isn't there. And so there is redirection, which is rolled in with Yoast SEO Pro. And then optimal is one. So I like to have uh, plugins that can help with making the site perform better. And one of a big performance hit that sites have, especially because we have such large browser sizes, or people can be surfing on their TV or devices that are, you know, hooked up to TVs or have massive monitors or 4K monitors. You know, big images take a lot of space and can slow down your site. And so things like Optimal or Smush to help get your image sizes down, or using some of the newer type formats, WebP, stuff like that, we like to use. And WP Fastest Cache also has settings for stuff like that, where you can use CDNs or have those images and types of content hosted elsewhere that they're grabbing, or you can use settings in Fastest Cache to help kill some of that load time and performance hits that can make users be discouraged from staying on your site and given high bounce rates and stuff like that. So WP Fastest Cache, Optimal, and you know, guys, in the next couple of weeks, in the next month and a half or so, we will be doing some tutorials, whether it be blog or YouTube. We can put up some videos of how we normally use these plugins, settings, configurations, best practices that we like to use. Another one that I like to have is duplicate page. This one comes in handy, especially, excuse me, if you're using page builders. And so this is, you know, left up to designers, developers, clients. We're living in the days where Squarespace, GoDaddy, some of the e-commerce type hosting services will give you quick and intuitive ways to create pages in browser without having to know, you know, HTML, CSS, and plethora of other languages to kind of format and get looks and feels and layouts out. We've seen the emergence of page builders in the last, you know, 3 to 5 years, and I lean towards Elementor. You know, there's Beaver Builder, there's Breezy, and so again, I lean towards Elementor, so that's definitely on my list. And at Progressive Dental, we mostly use Elementor for building the page layouts and whatnot. We have a couple Beaver builders still hanging around, and we really like Elementor because it has a lot of extensibility within that as well. Lots of third-party extensions, plugins, and you know, they work well with, say, WooCommerce and other functionality building plugins. And so they have made a big push to be a page builder that also helps with the functionality side, and being very versatile and flexible and scalable to help you build more complex and dynamic websites. And so we like to use them, but duplicate page is a nice way to, even outside of Elementor's templating and stuff, to just quickly replicate something, and then you can go in there and change some widgets and layouts around how you see fit. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple in there. If anyone listening has any suggestions or better types of plugins that they like to have right off the bat in any given WordPress install, you know, let us know.
Yeah, tell us if you don't think Elementor is the best. Tell us why. I'm going to start by forgiving you for using Squarespace and GoDaddy in the same sentence. I'm just kidding. That's totally fine.
Just letting people know
Yeah,
they have options.
just one.
Just one. That's right.
It's WordPress. That is the option. Doesn't matter where you host it. Obviously, I would I would push that GoDaddy has the best offering, but WordPress is what we're talking about here. So there are a lot of plugins that you just mentioned. So we will make sure that we list all of those in the show notes with
Absolutely.
links to where you can see those. What I really like about that list is that, like, if you stopped there, you would have a site. Like, that's what you need. Once you've installed WordPress, you run through that list of things. You've got advanced custom fields, custom post type UI. That's basically those two plugins right there. Basically, take WordPress from being that blogging platform to being a full-fledged CMS. There are other plugins like ACF and custom post type UI. Those two are by far the most commonly used ones. So they're not the only ones, but they're definitely the most popular. They're going to have huge communities around them, lots of support, lots of help. And that way you can go ahead and structure your data. Then you've got the SEO things. You've got some image optimization and caching stuff in there. And then you kind of started to talk about page builders, some with Elementor. Once you have those things in place, and that's all you really need to start building out a site. You've got a site at that point. If you have those things, not just installing those things, of course, you have to configure them, set them up, and add your content to the site and all of that. But that's kind of the basics. If you don't add anything else, you still have a full-fledged, fully functioning, probably beautiful, because the page builders generally make generally allow you to put together really nice stuff, whether it's with their templates
Oh yeah.
or doing it, but custom. And then you've got some SEO and some caching stuff in there. I mean, right there, if you called it quits, you add your content, you've got a beautiful site. You could walk away happy, I think.
Oh, for sure. And what about you? What are some plugins that you find necessary or that help you build or develop your sites better, faster, stronger?
Yeah, so like I said, what you laid out gives you a website. So I kind of wanted to take the opportunity to sort of expand on that if you wanted to go a little bit further. You already kind of started talking about page builders. I also am a huge fan of Elementor. That's what I generally build sites with. If you take a look at the heading 2 site, it's also Elementor. So obviously we have a preference there, but there are other good choices. I would say that with the advent of Gutenberg and the block editor, that likely more and more sites are going to start being built using just WordPress's built-in page builder. But personally, I don't think it's quite ready for that yet. I actually have tried to put together a couple of sort of pre-production ideas with the block editor and find myself falling back to Elementor. I don't know if that's a product of needing to unlearn something that I already learned, where somebody coming in brand new to using the block editor for building sites isn't going to have to unlearn everything that they could do with Beaver Builder, Elementor, Divi, or any of those.
Fair enough.
So time will tell whether or not I'm able to move over to different things or care to, or any of that. But certainly having a page builder is going to be important, whether that's just the built-in WordPress page builder and blocks, or something like the ones that we've mentioned so far.
One reason that we absolutely love Elementor too. I mean, today I spent all day watching webinars put together by the Elementor team. They've got such a big community. Their YouTube channel putting out weekly content, continuous updates. They really listen to developers, designers' feedbacks, and try to make Elementor as performant, as interactive as they can be. It's very intuitive. They allow you to do animations and micro interactions. So they really are trying to stay on the forefront of things before they're even trending on the web, and keep innovating and helping the design and development community and businesses, small businesses, large businesses, uh, move forward. So, we really like them because they add a lot of value to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of great stuff that we can say about Elementor, saving you time, beautiful designs, easy to use. Um, it probably sounds like this podcast is sponsored by Elementor, and it's not yet. Elementor, if you want to sponsor us, we're open to that. We're not sponsored by Elementor or any of the other plugins. These are just the ones that we use and love, and so that's why we're talking about them here. But moving away from page builders to some of the other things that you might use for building or developing for WordPress sites. There are a few others that I have on the list here. We've got Query Monitor. Query Monitor allows you to kind of check in with what's going on in your site, what code is being run on any given page, how fast that code is running. If you have errors, that's going to show where the error is coming from on your page and the code, so that you can go debug it and troubleshoot, try to fix those errors. Just gives you a lot of information about what's going on any given page in your site, and helps with some performance enhancements as well. Not actually making the site more performant, but telling you where performance issues are happening so that you can track them down and fix them. One of the other ones that I really like is called Code Snippets. To be able to kind of modify things in your WordPress site using code, there are a number of ways that you can do that. Creating your own plugin is one way, or there's a functions PHP file in your theme that you can edit as well. Not your theme, but your child theme. Please don't edit your actual theme, because once that updates, it'll overwrite that file and all of what you've added will be gone. So make sure that you're using a child theme if you're doing that, but then writing code in there. The other way is through the Code Snippets plugin, which is my favorite way to do it because it's simple. There's a UI. If things update, your code doesn't get overwritten or anything like that. So what the Code Snippets plugin basically does is it gives you an interface to be able to add PHP code to your website to just basically change the functionality or change some of the text within the site, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And so Code Snippets allows you to do that in a way where the code is then saved in the database, and then it's called from there rather than the code base, which may or may not be overwritten depending on updates and stuff like that. Just rolling into a couple of other ones that I have listed here that I think are helpful for just like the development of a site. User role editor is one that I like to use a lot. If you have different users at your site that need to do different things, have different permissions, user role editor is really great for that. We'll get to some of the commerce stuff later with like a membership site, but being able to kind of fine tune what members in a membership site are able to do based on their role. User role editor allows you to do that in a no code way, just through the WordPress interface. You can go to the settings for user role editor and see all of the different possible permissions that a user could have at your site. And you're just checking boxes on and off to allow those roles to be able to do those things or not do those things within your site. So I find that one super helpful. And then the last one that I have listed here for kind of this development, site building section is a plugin called User Switching. And user switching allows you to test your site as if you were a different user on the site. So let's say that you've set up a few different roles within your site. You have regular site visitors, you have maybe some editors and some administrators. You want the editors to be able to come in and just touch certain parts of the back end of the site to edit content. But as an administrator, you're logged in as an administrator, you don't know whether that's working the way it's supposed to be working or not. So user switching allows you to switch over to a user that has that editor role and be able to see what it is that they would see if they were logged in. It includes, fast switching back to your own user account, and just saves you from having to log out and log in as other users all the time, and even prevents you from having to even know other users' passwords. That way you don't have a bunch of shared passwords. The administrator can log in and switch to a user that has a different role without needing to know their password, and be able to see what that is that they are able to do, and then they can switch back to being their own administrator role. I had a couple others, mostly some caching stuff. You've already talked a little bit about caching when you talked about WP Fastest Cache. The one that I had is WP Rocket. It's also a really popular one that we've recommended a lot to folks who, when I was on the support team, would come to us and tell us that their sites were running a little bit slow. WP Rocket is usually one that we would recommend adding to the site and being able to cache some of the different pieces of the site. So either one of those, WP Fastest Cache or WP Rocket, are going to be great options for that. And that is all that I had on the list for developing sites. So why don't we just go ahead and roll right into the next one? And TJ, maybe you can tell us a little bit about plugins that you might want to install to manage your sites once you have them up and going.
Yeah. So actually rolling off some of the last couple of plugins that you had that kind of dealt with security and user and role management. I've got two right off the bat here that are security based. We've got login limit, just in case anything malicious or kind of spam bots try to get in there and guess passwords. We can lock some of that down with login limit. Advanced access manager, kind of along the same lines as the user role plugin that you mentioned, is really nice. I think that there may be a user switching ability within that one as well, but I have found that user switching was really nice. As you were saying, one, security, two, cut down on some development time, even if it's as little and as and annoying as logging out as yourself, logging in as another
Yeah,
user.
the more you can cut down on the tedious tasks that you're doing that are just there because they're, just the thing you have to do. If you can kind of shortcut that process and do it in a secure way that doesn't require passwords, that's always the way to go.
Yeah, that's really nice. And then another one, this one is usually there's usually a reCAPTCHA plugin or a setting depending on what kind of form plugin you're using for your site, whether you're using Contact Form 7, Ninja Forms, or if you're even using form building widget within Elementor. You'll at least need to hook into reCAPTCHA API and get security keys and stuff like that. For a couple of the plugins, you may need a reCAPTCHA sort of extension plugin that can talk to your form plugin. And so that one's
Yeah,
on
what
there just in
what would
case.
what would somebody use the reCAPTCHA plugin for if anybody's not familiar with reCAPTCHA services in general?
Sure, that is a big one. It's a service and product by Google that helps to keep uh, spam numbers and spam submissions down. Say you have anywhere from 1 to 5 contact forms, or if you've got a form that you have anyone filling out if they're looking for, say, a job or whatever with your company on the website, it can help protect any kind of form submission from getting spammy type submissions. And so there's a couple variations. At Progressive Dental and at the last agency I worked at, we found ourselves going back to or like visual reCAPTCHAs. So you'll have to click to say you're not a
This
robot.
is this is that, like, choose all the squares that have a street light or a crosswalk in them, right?
Yes, they have varying degrees of annoyance for which are rolled into convenience for you know uh, the user and for your client or your business, as
Do you
to
ever
not
do you ever
get a lot of that.
question do you question if you're a robot if you get that wrong? Like, I've chosen where I thought all the street lights were and then missed one or clicked on one that didn't have a street light, and then it tells me no and I'm like, oh no, am I a robot?
I haven't thought that I was a robot, but I was in fear that somebody would come barging in thinking that I was a robot, and maybe Elon Musk would come in saying he's been right about AI all along, and we should really beware because
Yeah.
I'm trying to sign up for a new service to save 5% on credit cards or something.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
reCAPTCHA is not keeping robots out of your site, it's alerting Elon Musk to where all the robots are.
yes, very, very, very true. I could see him using that. And so
All right,
those
sorry.
are so yeah. Sorry, we divulged really quickly. That escalated fast. So those are a couple for security, for management of the sites. So we at Progressive Dental, sorry, GoDaddy, um, we host our sites with WP Engine
I'm out.
and
Do the rest of the show yourself. No, I'm just kidding.
all right, he'll be back the week after Thanksgiving, folks. um, and so we use there's a WP Engine plugin that we have that we use that for caching. So we'll clear cache. A lot of times you'll need to clear cache if you're making changes to the website. Um, it can be functionality based, but sometimes you could be updating content and you will see the change and the fix and the update on your end while you're signed in, but the rest of the world is still being served up an older cache version. And so we'll use WP Engine's plugin to cache from their servers within the dashboard of WordPress. Managed WP is one that handles backing up of sites, a couple security measures, backing up
You're
of database files.
you're back on the good list. Managed WP is a GoDaddy product, so it's okay. We're good.
That's precisely why I did them in that order.
I'll put the headphones back on. I'll continue.
Okay. So I did that in that order, so I wouldn't be bumped from the list. I needed to get back on the list. So Managed WP is a great product and service. As Marcus said, under the umbrella of GoDaddy, and so they can help do a lot of that security and backup. And so I'll use that for some freelance stuff and some side projects. Infinite WP we use on and off, and that can help with doing plugin updates and getting that to a lot of our client sites without us needing to go in there and do some of the updating ourselves. And so it's nice to not have to go through. So for us, we've got hundreds of clients. That is a lot of manpower that can be taken care of. With
is
automation.
Infinite WP a plugin, or is that like a SaaS service? Is there another?
It is.
I'm not familiar with Infinite WP. Do they go in and sort of manually make sure that things don't get broken after updates and all that, or is it just a plugin that you connect and it then does plugin updates for you?
You know what? I haven't had to use that a bunch. Just from my understanding, we have it in our suite of plugins, and I kind of let it work its magic. We may have to take a sidebar on that, and I will have to go get my knowledge base up in Infinite WP.
Yeah, that's fine.
But,
I only asked that to clarify. This is not a sales pitch, but Managed WP also does backups and it does plugin updates. So
it does. That is correct.
Worth considering just using the Managed WP service that you're already using to do plugin updates as well.
That's right. I'll have to talk with Progressive Dental to see where we can go with that one.
Tell them I told you to change it. They'll do it.
Oh, absolutely. We've got an in with GoDaddy. That's right. Easy
official
sell.
Representative.
That's right. And that's about it on the list of my stuff that I've got on my end for security and management. Anything else that you would like to suggest in that realm or category of plugins?
Yeah, I think you tackled most of the things that I had on my list as well for backups and security and all of that. Managed WP is, like we talked about, a GoDaddy product, and it also powers the Hub by GoDaddy Pro, which does a lot of those things as well. Again, this is not a sales pitch, but the Hub is free. There's no selling. The Hub is free. Just have to sign up for it, and then you can add all your WordPress and non-WordPress sites there, and they don't even have to be hosted at GoDaddy. And then it'll take care of backups and plugin updates. And there's constantly different things. I think I read today that there's also some like user management stuff that's in there, so you can actually do your WordPress site user management right through the hub without having to log into each of your sites and all of that. So yeah, not a sales pitch. Again, like I said, it's free, so I'm not selling anything anyways.
I
But
will vouch for that. I will vouch for that because I do use the hub, and like you said, that's working, with managed WP. And I, in fact, have a site that is hosted at Cloudways, and I was able to add that on there. It is moving to GoDaddy with the rest of the sites that I own. Um, but yes, I will vouch. I will vouch for that too. Yes.
yeah, it's just a super simple way to kind of collect all of your, especially if you have, 10, 20, 50, 100 clients, you can kind of get them all in there into one place and do updates and backups and all of that. And it's okay if they're hosted at Cloudways or WP Engine or one of the other great hosts that are out there. It doesn't have to be GoDaddy hosted to work with the hub. So yeah, check that out. Just do a search for the hub at GoDaddy Pro. That'll take you right to it. Yeah, that's I think all that I wanted to add there. It's not officially a plugin for WordPress, but I'd be hard pressed not to share that with our listening audience while we were kind of talking about some of those things.
Oh, for sure. It is always nice to have uh, a hub, so to speak, where you can kind of get a centralized location where you can see all that without having to go to, again, a couple different hosts or going to each website itself. If if you have hosting clients and you've got a ton of different websites, it's nice to be able to manage that from a central location. Um, all right, going from necessary plugins to security plugins to management plugins, um, onto the good stuff. So say you want to sell products, services, apparel. Uh, again, like you said, again, very versatile. You can have membership sites. You can have, different kinds of services, marketplace vendor type stuff like Etsy. What kind of plugins would you use to turn your website into an online store?
Yeah, so glad you asked. I want to say it's our current GoDaddy CEO that I've heard say anyone who ever starts a website intends to sell something. And I tried to find a way for that not to be true, but I think it's true.
I
Um,
I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it might not be in the short term. It might be a long-term plan. It might not even be a plan to begin with. It might be something that, you stumble upon along the way. Um, but I think it's true. And so that's kind of why I staked at least this portion of my career on WooCommerce and having that focus. So
Yeah.
the first answer, the direct answer to your question, how would I turn a WordPress site into an online store, is by adding the WooCommerce plugin. WooCommerce is free and open source, which means it's freely downloadable at woocommerce.com. That's also in the WordPress.org repository, but you can download it, add it to your site, and once you activate it, there are a few steps to walk through to kind of get things set up, but essentially you're an online store at that point. Um, you add some products and all of that, and I'll talk about some of the other pieces that you might need in addition. But once you add some products, you're off and running. You're selling things. So WooCommerce is, again, like we've mentioned with some of these others, not the only option that you have for creating an e-commerce store from your WordPress site, but it's certainly the most popular. I think it's like 3 million sites or something are running on WooCommerce, which is huge. And yeah, so that's where I would start. I start with WooCommerce. There are some things that you have to think about when you're starting an e-commerce store. The first one is payment gateways. Just having a store doesn't allow you to accept money on its own. You have to connect that to a service of some kind that will do the money collecting for you. There are certainly, depending on what kind of company you are, if you're a local business, you can have an order be placed and then just have folks pay for it when they come to pick it up in the store. But for the most part, you're going to want to take payments at the website. So a payment gateway of some kind is going to be necessary there. There are a ton of great choices. Probably the most globally accepted, popular is going to be PayPal. And that's also great because it doesn't necessarily require a credit card. In some cases, if you're selling to other countries, then you're going to want to take into consideration that they may not have credit cards that work with your credit card payment gateways and all of that. And so that is a major reason why PayPal is so globally popular, is it gives you this way to make payments or to accept payments if you're the store that
Okay.
doesn't necessarily require credit cards. That being said, I would recommend adding a payment gateway also that is for credit cards. Not everyone is going to have PayPal or want to pay through PayPal. So having other ways to accept credit card payments is definitely going to be important as well. There are great choices there. Again, I'll plug the GoDaddy one. GoDaddy Payments is a fantastic
Okay.
payment option to be able to accept credit cards, really low rates and all that stuff. Not a sales pitch. I won't get into all that. And then there's Stripe and Authorize.net that are very popular. Braintree, which actually is a PayPal product, but also is sort of in that same
Okay.
family of accepting credit cards, are all really great choices. And then the other that I kind of wanted to mention is becoming really popular now, and that's things like Affirm and Klarna, where if you have maybe
Yes.
higher ticket items that are more easily split across multiple payments, there are these other services that have now added integrations with WordPress and WooCommerce to allow customers to kind of break their payments out. So the way that that works is those companies, they're basically credit companies. They will pay you, the merchant, for whatever the customer is purchasing, and then
Mm-hmm.
the customer will pay back those services in installments. So either way,
Okay.
you as the merchant get paid. So it's always
Right.
great to offer these because you're getting paid in full, even though the customer is having the option to break those across several payments. Some of those are 4 weeks. I think Klarna is like a 4 weeks every single time, or maybe that's Afterpay. There are a few
Okay.
different ones. Affirm, I think, allows you to spread it over several months and stuff, depending on the size of the purchase and all that. So if you're selling a lot of lower ticket items, things that are in the 5, 10, $15 range, that probably doesn't make sense. But if you're within, in the couple of $100s and up, then having an option for people to be able to spread those out over multiple payments by integrating with a company like Affirm is a great way to get folks to buy items that maybe they wouldn't have purchased immediately otherwise.
Ooh, that's
All
good to
right.
know.
Yeah, so that gets through the payment. So there are kind of these in WooCommerce, sort of these three pillars that I always like to talk about that you have to have:
Mm-hmm.
payments, shipping, and taxes. And some of those are more exciting than others. So we talked about payments. Let's just get taxes out of the way. You definitely need to make sure that you're collecting and submitting taxes appropriately or accurately. I would never suggest that you do this on your own. WooCommerce does have some built-in things where you can set tax rates for different parts of the country. Don't do that. Don't use don't use that. Connect to a service. There are a couple of really great ones. Avalara is one that I recommend often. There's also TaxJar, and I think Jetpack, which is a WooCommerce product, um, also has some tax stuff in it. Some of those will also submit the taxes for you. So not only will they collect the taxes from your site, from the payments, but they'll also submit them to the states or the federal taxes that you need to have submitted for that. When I usually talk about taxes, I like to talk about, this is kind of the reason why I would suggest or recommend having a service do it. I had a coworker that I used to work with that he said he lived on one street in a town, and the neighbor
Okay.
right behind him lived in the same in the same city, in the same county, obviously in the same
Right.
state, and was in a different tax zone. So just being in the same city doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same taxes. The same county doesn't mean it's going to be the same taxes. You really need to have, even down to the street level, making sure that you are collecting the appropriate taxes for your purchases. So it's like a thousand, and they're always changing. So that may be the case today. Tomorrow it might be a next street over, or next week or whatever. They're always changing. I think there have been like 1,000 or so tax line boundary changes in the last 4 or 5 years. I think I read that somewhere.
Wow.
Um, yeah, you don't want to try and keep up with that yourself. let a service do that. Just peace of mind. Connect it to one of those services, let them handle all of that, and that way you don't get, in trouble down the line by not having the appropriate taxes collected or submitted.
No, I'm good with that. I'm not much of a numbers person. I'm not the most organized person. Yeah, so someone else can handle that. I think what Marcus means to say is we need to take that up with local and federal government to fix those types of issues.
Yeah.
But
In the
really,
meantime,
that's a really great idea. Yeah,
until
better safe
until
than
we can do
sorry.
that, yeah, just let a service like Avalara or TaxJar handle those things. And then the other one is shipping, right? That's that third pillar in the pillars that I was talking about. And
Yes,
shipping is, of course, you're only going to need to worry about that if you're shipping goods. WooCommerce can be used to
right?
sell digital goods or physical goods. So of course this applies to the physical goods side of things, which is probably a majority of the folks that are using WooCommerce are selling physical goods, but it's not 100%. So if you're selling digital goods, you don't really have to worry about the shipping part too much. But if you're selling physical goods, then you'll want to make sure that you have some shipping options set up. For that, I would again, like the payments piece, recommend multiple options. Studies have shown that people like to have multiple options and will often choose the higher priced one, even though it's higher priced because it's
Yes.
faster and it'll get the item to them faster. Have multiple options. Also consider where you're shipping from and where you're shipping to. So you'll have different options whether you're shipping like domestically, just with if you're in the United States, shipping just to the United States, you might have different options than
Okay.
if you're shipping to other countries. Make sure that you have those things in place. There are lots of different plugins. I'm not going to rattle them all off, but there's, like USPS and UPS in the US, there's Royal Mail and Australia Post, and all sorts of different mail services depending on where you're shipping from and to. And a lot of those will also do the calculations for you, which is great. So
Yeah, that's nice.
when you're in WooCommerce setting up your products, make sure you add dimensions and weight to those products, and that way these shipping services will be able to go ahead and calculate those rates for you, and that saves you from having to even worry about the rates. So sort of going, parlaying into that, trying to decide whether you want to do live rates, let those plugins handle that, or flat rates is something that you need to do as well. If you're doing flat rates, that's nice and easy, but you run the risk of undercharging for shipping if it's being sent somewhere further away and stuff. So I don't know that I necessarily recommend flat rates or live rates one over the other. I think you just need to look at your business and how you're shipping things and see what makes the most sense for you. Some of them even let you print out the labels, shipping labels, right through the plugin within WordPress. All right, moving past those three pillars, I have a couple more things to just rattle off here. Some things that you want to think about. WooCommerce is very heavy on emails. Any e-commerce system is, right? There's a lot of transactions happening. Order confirmations are being sent. Those orders are also being sent to you as an administrator so that you know a new order came through. And then lots of status updates for orders that are being, changing from processed to shipped to completed and all of that stuff. So there are a few things that I recommend there. A email customizer plugin. WooCommerce
Okay.
does have some email customization that you can do, but it's going to mostly require coding the emails yourself. I'd recommend WooCommerce Email Customizer, which is in the WooCommerce marketplace on woocommerce.com. That'll allow you to do some additional customization to your emails. And then having something like WP Mail SMTP in place to ensure kind of more reliability of your emails. By
Yeah.
default, emails are just getting sent from your site. Some email inboxes don't like that. They don't like being sent mail from a website. They want to be sent mail from another email service
Email.
inbox or outbox, I guess. In any case, they want to be sent mail from another email service and not from a website. So WP Mail SMTP allows you to connect your WordPress site to a real email box to then be able to send those emails out, and the deliverability will be much higher that way.
Okay.
And then kind of the last things, these are not necessities, but it just kind of depends on what it is that you're trying to do with your site. I wrote down e-learning. WooCommerce is a fantastic platform for setting up e-learning things. The two plugins that I would say will help you the most in setting some of that up is WooCommerce memberships and WooCommerce subscriptions. And then so memberships will allow you to kind of restrict some of the content on your site. It also does a few other things that aren't e-learning related necessarily, like offering product discounts to members. And then subscriptions is kind of it's not an add-on, it is its own standalone plugin, but memberships and subscriptions are so commonly used together that I sort of see them
Yes.
as one piece a lot. And subscriptions is what takes being able to charge for a membership and adds that automated billing piece to it so that it's
Okay, that makes
recurring
sense.
month after month or year after year. So you can pay for a membership with WooCommerce without using the subscriptions plugin, but it's going to be a one-time payment. When you add subscriptions, that allows you to collect money on a recurring basis. And then of course you're going to want to add a learning management system to actually show the e-learning piece to the courses and the quizzes and all of that stuff. So there are a couple there. My favorites, I would say, there are Lifter LMS or LearnDash, either one of those. There's also Sensei LMS, which is made by the Automatic team, the same company that makes
Okay.
WordPress and WooCommerce. And it's free. It's just not quite as robust. So if you're thinking about doing e-learning, I would recommend starting with Sensei and sort of seeing what it takes to kind of build up some of that content, create some of those courses and lessons. And once you've got to a place there where you feel like you have, a cohesive system there going on for your courses, once you find some things that you might want to add to that, it may make sense to then shift over to one of those other ones, Lifter, LMS, or LearnDash. They're just much more fully featured. They do cost money, but they are much more fully featured. So when you start to get to a place where you are lacking things that you need from your learning management system in something like Sensei LMS, then those are great choices to move from there. And then the last one, and that we'll probably have an episode that's all WooCommerce where I'll rattle even more about all of these things. But I just want to talk about just WooCommerce can do so many different things that I wanted to touch on a couple of them. E-learning
Okay.
being one of them. Like event tickets and event management stuff is another one that WooCommerce does really well, allowing you to sell tickets to events or meetups or that kind of thing. And the two main plugins that I would recommend there are WooCommerce Bookings and WooCommerce Box Office. Those are both really great plugins. They're slightly different in what they do. Box Office is going to lean more towards the like event tickets type sales, and then WooCommerce Bookings would be more like, let's say you're a salon or something and you want to have specific time frames throughout the day available for folks to grab. WooCommerce Bookings will allow your customers to choose a date and time that you've said that you're available, and pay for that slot. So they'll pay for that, then it's no longer available to everyone else, and they'll show up and business as usual there. So again, I'm sure that we will go into more and more WooCommerce stuff in future episodes, so I won't rattle on anymore. I think the biggest takeaways there are, if you want an e-commerce site, I recommend WooCommerce. WooCommerce, I think, is the way to go. And then just touching each of those three pillars, making sure that you have some way of accepting payment, some way of collecting taxes and submitting them accurately, and some way to ship your products. Really, if you can tackle those three pillars on top of installing WooCommerce, all the rest is kind of just minor details, just little niceties along the way to kind of fill out the experience a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds like a real solid foundation.
Yeah, I know you and I have done a few WooCommerce sites together back in the day. Is there anything that any insights that you have on, you know, WooCommerce or your experiences? Anything that you liked or disliked about working with WooCommerce? I won't hold it against you if there's something you dislike about WooCommerce.
Well,
That's totally allowed.
well, again, as with Elementor, uh, WooCommerce tries to be a great solution to any kind of almost any kind of like store, product, service uh, based kind of online entity or e-commerce, like you're saying, for for ticketing, for live events, for salons, for I mean, it is in the name itself, booking, like again, for
Hmm.
like hotels, resorts, stuff like that, um, and even other things like we can get into in a deeper dive episode, in a series for WooCommerce and different kinds of stores you can have online. I mean, even drop shipping or print on demand type services, where if you're selling
Oh yeah.
apparel and stuff and it's not strictly on an Etsy store, you can have an extension and a plugin for that WooCommerce will talk to, say, Printful, which is for all different types of
Yes, love
products.
Printful.
Yeah, yeah. So shirts, shoes, bags, posters, wall decor. You can have that stuff, and then other things like Guten, where you can do invitations, postcards, socks. You can have a pretty robust store, and you don't have to build all of that within WooCommerce itself. It can talk to other services that you may use as a business or designer, and you can pull your inventory from there, or say even Square, if you've got art that you've put up and you sell that with Square and use that as your processing or your gateway. You can sync inventory from Square, from Guten, and so again, it will talk to all these different types of services, and you can have a store where you don't individually have to put every product within WordPress, especially if you've got inventory somewhere else. So really that's really great. So you can do so much with it. That's what's so lovely about it.
The show notes for this episode are going to have so many links in it. I'm just realizing now that I'm going to have to listen to this whole thing back and try to write down all of the things that we mentioned in this episode with links and stuff. But I think that's awesome. I think there's a lot of great stuff there. I think most of the plugins that we talked about are episodes unto themselves. Like you
Oh,
said, I think
absolutely.
we're gonna in the next few weeks here do a little bit of writing or video stuff and walking through some of those plugins, because I do think that a lot of them necessitate their own, maybe not a podcast episode, but their own content to kind of share a little bit more. um if we went into every detail of what all of these plugins did in this episode, it'd be like 9 hours long. So definitely going to split some of that up. We'll get the links in the show notes and stuff, and make sure that we get all that available so everyone can see that. So I think we are getting to the top of the hour here, and so with that, I think I'll start to wrap us up a little bit. Make sure that you check out our website, which is starting to come along. We've got some content there starting to roll in. The podcast episodes are being posted there as well. Still no homepage, but we'll get there. We will add we will add a legit homepage here shortly, and that way there's something to see, and you can get to where you're going. But there's a navigation. It says blog and podcast if you want to check out some of the writing in the podcasts. That's a great way to check it out. That's at heading2.com. That's headingtwo.com. Also, in some future episodes, we're going to answer some of your questions. So please do make sure that you get those to us so that we can answer them for you. If you want to do that, we did set up an email for that, and that's hello@heading2.com. So again, hello@headingtwo.com. Send us your questions there. Anything having to do with WordPress, WooCommerce, web development, web design, anything kind of in that realm. Honestly, if you want to email us a question that has nothing to do with any of that, that's totally fine too. We might even spend a few minutes talking about that as well.
Oh,
otherwise, but yeah, make sure that you hit that star or heart or whatever is in your podcast listening app there to let us know that you like this episode. Subscribe to get the next episode, the next one. Again, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll skip a week here because it's Thanksgiving in the US next week, so we won't be able to record at that time. But hit subscribe. So in a couple weeks when we're back, you'll get that right into your app and be able to listen to that. Yeah, that's all from me. TJ, you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you guys get some value out of this. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See
Bye.
ya.